So thank you so much for coming. I'm Nicole DeLessio. As you can see, I have a short URL up here with all of the notes and resources. There are a ton of resources available that I've made for you, and I won't have time to go through all of them, but they're there, and just in case you forget anything I tell you, they're there too, so you can make a copy of this if you want to take notes, whatever works for you. Earlier, when people were walking in, I had my friend John walk around and hand out little strips of paper to people. How many of you got one of those? Okay, good. So the good news is I'm going to make you work today and do some things. And if you did not get a strip and we didn't have enough, then you're going to want to sit next to somebody eventually. We can move around later. That does have one of those little strips, because we're going to be doing things with Google Classroom and Chromebooks and lots of different hands-on things. And before I do that, I'm going to give you a glimpse into my classroom and what I'm doing. So I teach 4th grade in Pleasanton, California, which is up in the Bay Area. And first of all, how many people here are elementary school teachers? How many people are middle school, high school, administrators, or something else? Okay, cool. So I'm going to just basically tell all of the different things that I'm doing in my classroom, and then it's your job to think about how you would modify it to work in your own classroom, and hopefully you'll have some ideas to share out with each other too. So you just have to think creatively about it, and I just love how teaching is kind of like a craft, and you can modify it however works. And I also wonder too, how many people here are Google Apps for Education schools and who are already using it? And how many people have Chromebooks? Okay, cool. And how many are a one-to-one program? Okay, that's great. So I do have Chromebooks in my classroom. I don't have a one-to-one program. We have one Chromebook cart that I share with the other 4th grade classes, so I have it a couple of days a week. And I've been a Google certified teacher since 2009. We've had Google Apps for Education for, I think, about 3 years or so. And I've been kind of doing a little bit differently, modifying and revamping things every year and doing more and more, as every year we get more and more access to the Chromebooks. And the other thing, too, is that I'm learning more and more all the time as well. And it seems to get a little bit better as we go. So this is my class, my 4th graders. I have 33 students. There's a lot of them. And they're a really lively bunch of kids. And they really do love what we're doing with the Chromebooks. And the other good news is, too, you don't have to have Chromebooks to do these things. So we also have some access to other computers as well. And there's a lot of other teachers who tell me, well, what are you doing? I don't know what to do all day with the Chromebooks when I have them. They're not really sure about how to use all that time. And I think that the days that we do have them, time really flies by. And so I will also be talking about Google Classroom a lot. How many people here are already using Google Classroom? Okay, cool. So you might also want to buddy up with those people too and get some ideas for them. And we're going to be jumping into Google Classroom today as well and talking about some other Google apps and hopefully get some ideas that you can use in your classroom on Monday. So talking about the concept of the cloud, the Chromebooks only run with the stuff in the cloud, with the internet. A little backstory on when we did get our Chromebook cart. There was something going out on the Google Certified Teacher Network where they were doing some special deal where there was Chromebooks that they were offering for $100. And then Donors Choose was doing a matching program where they did dollar for dollar. So it got it down to $50 per Chromebook, and we had to jump on it right away. And there was another 4th grade teacher that wrote a proposal to get them. And then we went to the PTA and approached the PTA, and we had very little time to do this, and said, would you mind donating $50 per Chromebook for a class set that we're going to share? And then with the things that we learn and figure out how to do, we'll also go ahead and show the other teachers how we're doing it. And so the PTA said, great, and they went and they got the Chromebooks for us, and we got them. And then when we told the principal in the district, it made them a little bit uneasy because they said, well, the thing is, our Wi-Fi may not be able to handle that. And it made them really nervous because I think a lot of schools, they may have some issues with that. And I said, well, the thing is, here are the Chromebooks, and they're here, they're ready to go. The kids had the Google Apps for Education's accounts. I said, if I sit around waiting for the Wi-Fi to get better, maybe it won't. And so sometimes if you just show that the need for better Wi-Fi is there, it will helped to get them to motivated to do that. And they did improve the Wi-Fi, and it's been pretty good most of the time. So the other thing, too, is that we really have to kind of get into the concept of storing all of our files in the cloud versus on our personal computers, because I don't know if any of you are like me. They work with teachers who have a lot of files on their old computers that they've stored there, and they get really nervous about it because they're like, well, what about this PowerPoint that I've been using for back-to-school night for the last 25 years? What am I going to do with that? And we said, don't worry, you can just upload it. You can, if you really don't want to start anything over, you can save it by uploading it. And the other thing that would happen a lot to me in the past is I would work at school, and then at home, I would go home and I would actually do some work at home. And I would want to access something, and when I did go to get it, I was like, oh no, I left it on my computer at school. And then when I got to school, I wanted to pull something up, and I was like, oh, I left it on my computer at home. So this solves that problem with everything being stored in the cloud in Google Drive. So the thing that's really cool about it is that all of my students have their Google Education Mail accounts, and it's the same login and password for all the Google apps, which I love. So I probably thought that the biggest challenge, especially working with younger kids, was teaching them to log into their accounts for the very first time. Anybody else have that dilemma? And then once they were able to do that, then it wasn't a problem, and everything was easy. And I really like the idea of paperless. So I like to consider myself that I know a lot of techie stuff with the Google apps and all that kind of thing, but one problem I always have that whenever I try to print something, the printer never works. I really like the idea of printing, and then also the time of everything being paperless. So it's just kind of like a whole different mindset. How many people here are paperless already? Okay, that's good. And how many people are still a little bit nervous about the idea of having everything be paperless? Right, so we'll talk about some of those challenges and how to overcome them, but basically Google Classroom has really helped tremendously. So we do have the shared Chromebook cart, and we use that. And then the other thing, too, that we do supplement it with is BYOD. And we don't have like one-to-one iPads or anything like that. But I do think that one thing that I really like having devices is that we can create media, like taking the photos and we take the videos. And anybody here doing BYOD in their districts as well? So I was really kind of nervous about it before I started that. And what I had the kids do was we created a Google Doc, and we put a whole bunch of brainstormed ideas on a collaborative Google Doc, and we brainstormed all the pros and all the cons, all the things that could go right about having it and all the things that could go wrong. And then we thought about different ways that we could prevent those problems. And the kids came up with a list of agreements on this collaborative Google Doc, and then they signed it, and then they had their parents sign it. And I just have them bring their devices one day a week. And that's the day that we create the media. We take the photos, for example, or the videos, and then we put the Google Drive app on their devices, which is free. And then you can upload all the photos and videos from there so that the days that they do have the Chromebooks, they have access to all that media, and then they can put that together in their different little projects that they're working on. And it seems to work really well. The other dilemma that a lot of people have been worried about is that they feel like the Chromebooks only have a little bit of space on them. But the other thing that happens in my BYOD is I get a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of different kinds of devices, and sometimes they show up with those old-fashioned digital cameras with the little memory cards in them. And it's actually easier to work with those than anything else because they can just take the card out of the camera, and they can stick it into the little slot that's on the side of the Chromebook, and then it acts as an external hard drive. So then they have access to all those photos, and then they can upload it to Google Drive, and then it's there. And also the same goes for the flash drive. They can move the files over that way as well. And that kind of solves those other little problems. So the thing that I did, too, in the beginning, before we had them, is I got into Google Sites. Anybody here using Google Sites already? And who here is using Google Sites with their students? So in the beginning, before I learned how to use Google Sites, I just practiced first by learning myself, and I created a teacher website. And basically, the teacher website is to share with parents and the kids. So a lot of the stuff that I have there is all online on the Google Sites, and I post different resources and handouts and different things like that. And then the parents can kind of see and get a good idea about what we're doing. And that saves me a lot of time as well. So it's like the outside communication with what's going on in my classroom. So just to show you a little bit about what I'm doing. So here's my teacher website. And what I did was I organized it by pages on what I needed to put on there. And I can do something like, I hate homework, but I do have a homework document. I have one Google document that I post all the homework and I update it every day. And then I have the older assignments going down on the bottom and I keep updating on the top. And I have it with hyperlinks to everything. So for example, we're doing literature circles in my classroom and I have a spreadsheet with a schedule with the literature circles and the reading parts. And then even if I ever do any handouts, I can just put those as PDFs and I can attach those too. So then the kids, there really is no reason why, if the dog ate the homework or whatever, they can access everything online and so can the parents. So what I do is I write on the Google Doc while the kids write the homework down in their planners. And then by the time they get home, if they're the type, I do have some of those kids that may not write in their books exactly like I wrote it, and then their parents can actually see before they walk out the door that they have everything. So that solves a lot of problems, and it saves me from having email back and forth with parents a lot. And the kids know how to access it as well, and the parents know that the kids know. And then I also do have a Meet the Teacher page, and I have some information on here, and I have how to sign up for Remind. Anybody here use Remind? It used to be called Remind 101, which I love. And I also make use of Google Voice, in which I also teach my students how to use it. So this is sort of like a model for them, and they can get some ideas for audio or for Google Voice, which I'll talk more about that. And then I can also put things like any sort of forms or documents or things like that all on my Google site. And I have useful links, and I have a wish list, and then I also have digital portfolios, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So the other thing that I do, which is similar to the homework page, is that when my students come in and they get their Chromebooks out of their cart, they open the Chromebooks up, and I give them a tiny URL to access a document with the lesson plans for the day, which is kind of like what I did for you when you came in and you got access to the presentation that I had. And they use this URL every single time they walk in, so I don't need to add any extensions or anything. They just go straight here, and I can put the directions of the things that they need to do, the tasks that they need to do, hyperlinks to whatever website they need to use. I also do a lot of instructional videos, and I put that on there as well. So if I say, you're going to be making a Google site today, I might go ahead and put a link to a tutorial that I had made on a Google site, and then on how to make a Google site, and they can watch the tutorial, and they can work at their own pace. So this is a great way to differentiate for the students to work at their own pace. So there are kids in my class who are really good at working independently, and they can just go on their way and keep going, and they can get a lot accomplished in a short amount of time. And I usually give more than enough for them so that there's more open-ended things for them to do or more creative things for them to do as they go on. And then if the other kids get stuck, it frees me up to go up and help them as they go. And so what I do is I update this every single time they have access to technology, whether it be in the Chromebooks or if we're in the desktop lab or whatnot. And it works really well. The other thing, too, is that I'm sharing this with all of you as well. And I share it with the other teachers on my staff and in my school district, because the ones who are not sure what they're supposed to do all day long on the Chromebooks, they can go in and spy on my lesson plans at any time. So it's very transparent, and I think for a lot of teachers that might make you kind of nervous, because you think well, maybe they're going to judge me and see the things that I'm doing, and they might think it's good or bad. But the truth of the matter is that if they do want to see what I'm doing, they only need to copy the things that are going to be useful or relevant to them, whether they like it or not. And the other thing that I've discovered is when I share my lesson plans with the other teachers and the things that I'm doing, they're a lot more likely to want to share with me. So I'm also a big proponent of sharing with the other teachers. And so this document is also available for the parents so that they could spy in and see what kind of things that we're doing. It's all open and external for everybody, and for the other teachers to use as well. And it tends to work pretty well. And the other thing, too, is that we have a lot of kids who, they go on these vacations during the school year. I have a lot of kids from other countries, and so they might go to India or something for a month, and then they send me this independent study contract that I got to fill out, like for them to be gone for 20 days, and it's really tedious to fill that out and try to decide what you're doing. So I just tell them, like, you can go ahead and go on this document and go ahead and see what we're doing and then accompany what we're doing when you're traveling. So it makes my workload a lot easier as well. And so what I was saying earlier is that I do Google Sites for myself, and then my students also do Google Sites. So each of my fourth graders makes their own Google Site, and then they can post all of their projects and their work on their Google Site that they can share with each other, and they can also share with their parents. And I also tell the parents and them that I share it with the other teachers. So I say that I will be presenting on these things, I'm going to be showing off your stuff, and I say, I really need your help because I want you to do a good job, because I want you to have some cool things that I can show to the other teachers, because maybe those other teachers are going to learn something and get some ideas that they can share with their kids. So it kind of goes back to the idea of the authentic audience, where them being motivated if they think that somebody else might see their work. So maybe in actuality, you may never even really look very closely at the things that they're doing, but they think that you are, so it helps them to work harder, and I like that. So what I've done is that each year I make one Google site where I put all of the students' websites on there. And then one of the first assignments that we do is I have them make an avatar, and then each of those avatars becomes a button that leads to their website. And so then the kids can click on each other's websites and see what it is. So I'll show you what that looks like as well. So here's an example from last year of my digital portfolios page. And then if I click here, then I get Lakshmi's website. And I tell them things like never put your last name on anything. And none of it's public. You can see it because I'm showing it to you. But then if I go through, they have a subject page for each thing that they're doing. So for example, they had to do book talk presentations using Google Presentation. They do a reading log where they post all the different books that they've read in fourth grade as they go, just for an example. Or if they're doing, we do a lot of photography stuff, they can put their little artwork on a certain page too. So I do a different page for every single subject area. And all of these they can make from their Chromebooks. And same thing with something like writing. They can embed their writing on here. And the fourth graders are able to figure out how to do this. So no pressure or anything, but my fourth graders can do it. And they love it, and they're really proud of it. So it's a little bit like open house all year long. And usually what I do is we start with baby steps. And I also have little tutorials that are available to all of you as well, that are chunked up for all these Google Sites and Google Drive and Google Apps that the kids use. And I also share it with the teachers. And I'm going to give access to all of that for you as well, so that if you find it useful, you can use it for your own learning. You're welcome to share it with your students or other teachers. And it's all going to be here on this link. And then I also have a page for things like collaborative different projects. So one of the things that I did was I use Google Voice. How many people here use Google Voice? Okay, I love Google Voice. And so I have a Google Voice number which I give out to parents and I give out to the students. And for example, on the first day of school, their homework is to call me and leave me a message and introduce themselves, and to tell, they have a prompt that they have to answer, what's your talent or what's your favorite thing to do outside of school. And they have to leave me a short voicemail message, which I then can embed on my Google site. And it's really interesting because for a lot of my fourth graders, it's the first time that they've ever made a phone call in their life, right? Isn't that crazy? But it's true. And just in, say, a 15-second phone message, it speaks volumes to me as an assessment, as an alternate way to assess where they are with their language skills and their confidence levels, and it's actually pretty cute. And then at the end of the year, I did another assignment too, where I talk about what's the most important thing that you learned, or what was the best thing about fourth grade, and then they have to call me. So you can think really creatively about how to use that as well, and then I can embed it on my site. And then I also can do like little collaborative projects too. So John was in here earlier talking about collaborative Google presentations. So I have each kid make a slide, and then they can put it into a collaborative Google presentation. And each kid contributes one slide to it, and we put it all together. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. It's no big deal, right? So Google Classroom, too, this has really made my life a lot easier since Google Classroom. In the beginning, I had used that one document that I told you about where I post my lesson plans every day and update them every day. And what I've done is I still use that for a lot of things where maybe they're just doing practice or different exercises. And then the assignments that I actually want them to turn in, I put in Google Classroom. So I'm a little bit more selective about some of the different things that they do in Google Classroom. So I'll be sharing some of the projects with you that they've been doing as some examples. And so like what I was saying earlier, your job is to think about how you might modify that in your own classroom. One thing that I did, which was like a huge undertaking that we've been working on, is doing a book where each of my students is writing their own book. And because I teach fourth grade, I have to teach fourth grade California history and geography, and then I also have to teach science, for example, and we're all doing just California themed stuff. So the kids create an A to Z book, and what we first do, the first step of the project, for example, is that they have to brainstorm California themed words from A to Z, so one word for each letter. And then they have to then take that word, so maybe they do A for Alcatraz, for example. And then they have to do some research and read some articles about Alcatraz. And then they have to write a short informational writing, because I have to teach informational writing too, about what they learned about that certain place. And then they have to create an image, either take an image or create an image that goes with the writing sample. And so at the same time of using these Google tools and the technology, they are also doing research and research on the internet. They're also doing nonfiction reading, because with the Common Core, we're supposed to do a lot more nonfiction reading. And then they're doing informational writing, and then they're putting it all together. And they can also collaborate with each other. And when they did their brainstorm list, we did a collaborative brainstorm list so that they could get ideas of like, well, oh my gosh, what are you going to choose for the letter Z? I have no idea what I'm going to do for the letter Z. And even I am learning some interesting things about California that I didn't know. So apparently there's a town called Zyzex, Z-Z-Y-X, some crazy. Like I never even heard about that. I'm from the northern half of the state. So, and I learned that because of the students had come up with it. So what I do in Google Classroom is I created a template for this book where I organize the storyboard, and we're then going to be turning into a photo book. So in Google Slides, I can create like an 8x8 template, and then I map out like the pages from A to Z where they put the writing and where they put the picture and kind of set it up. And when I post in Google Classroom, if you notice, they have a little option to make a copy for each student. So it then makes a copy for each of the students. So when they go to the assignment and they open it up, it automatically names the file and makes them a copy, and then they edit their own copy. So for those of you, I feel like there's two kinds of people: those who are like super organized with their files, and then those are not. And sometimes you have to work at it, and I'm one of those kind of people that has to work at it a little bit. But Google Classroom is great because it does it all for you. One of the problems that I used to have, and raise your hand if you've had this issue before, you get this untitled document. Oh my God, I could hear everybody groaning. Like that was my pet peeve, that they would not name the document, and then they can't find the file when they go search for it in their drive. I can't find the file, but now Google Classroom does it all for you. So that has been like really wonderful. And you can get really creative with what kind of templates that you want to do. I mean, it could be an old-fashioned handout that you want to give them, or in my case, the book template. You can do, a Google Drawing template. There's a whole bunch of different ideas of what works. And so I even have a hyperlink to the template that I made for each student. Let's see if I can find it. So here's the one that I made. And when I set it up, you can actually do like a custom, on the page setup, you can just do a custom template. So like I did 8 by 8 inches because we're going to turn this into a photo book. So after you're done, you can like download them as JPEGs, or I do it as a PDF and then export them as JPEGs, and it really works. And then I just have just kind of like the empty page all set up, and then they just fill it in. So it provides structure for them, and it makes it a lot easier. And with Google Classroom, that makes that possible as well. And then the other thing too is that I started doing a little sample of my own stuff, because my goal is that I want to write one of these books too. I try to give assignments to my students that I would be excited about doing myself. And I think they think it's cool if I'm doing it as well. So they're actually further along in their books than I am. I'm falling behind our schedule, but I will finish it maybe on spring break. And so I'll put the pictures in the text, and then they can see some examples of the things that I'm doing. And then here's one kid. So, the other thing too is I have these students who, they're super productive and they get a ton done. And then there's other kids who, like, they spend the whole day, and you're thinking, like, what were you doing all day, right? They don't get as much accomplished, but at least it allows them to work at their own pace. And then, so for example, this is one kid who just finished his book here. So he has it where he has all the writing and the pictures. And my goal is to get them really excited about learning, that they can go out and keep working on this project outside of class. I'd rather do that than assign a bunch of homework. I had one parent saying, like, my daughter is spending more time on the computer working on these projects than I ever had when I was a kid. And I said, well, I didn't tell her to do that. She's just doing it on her own. But the other thing, too, that's happened is that they may be learning about some of these places, and I can't afford to do all kinds of field trips for them, but they're learning about these new places. And then, for example, we got to W, and the Winchester Mystery House came up. And they were like, whoa, that sounds really cool. Well, the Winchester Mystery House is in San Jose, which is maybe like 25 miles away from my school. And they had never even heard of it before, but then they did the research, and then they said to, like, Mom, Dad, like, I want to go and see this Winchester Mystery House because I have to get a picture, because I have to turn it in, because I have to put it in my book. And then they do. And then the other thing, too, that they do is they share each other's photos with each other, too. So back to the idea of, the Common Core and all that, the kids are then collaborating with each other as well, because they can't possibly know how to do all of them. And then if they don't have pictures, because Hollywood's a little bit far, for example, for us, they'll go ahead and draw the images, and it works really well. So here is a little glimpse into the Google Classroom too. And you can see like when the due date is and how many kids are done and how many kids aren't done. I can post either an announcement or an assignment. And it looks like I actually have more students in my class than I do, but what the reality is that there's other teachers inside of my school who are inside of my domain. So the other thing about Google Classroom is it's all inside of the domain. So it's like a walled garden, right? So it's the safe place for learning and discussion, and the kids can post comments and things, and the only people that can get to it is other people in the district. So the other fourth grade teachers, they want to see what I'm doing. They've jumped in and added on as a student just so they could see the assignments, and then they can see what my students see from their perspective, because it looks a little bit different as a student than a teacher. You have a question? My district does not. But apparently, and somebody I'm sure else can answer this question, it's just like a button that you can turn on or off, as far as I understand. I wish that we had Google Plus, but they're still fearful about it. So this is kind of like a workaround for Google Plus, where they can have discussions and that kind of thing. Yes, question in the back? Not quite. So when they turn their assignments in, you can go to the assignment here, and this is what the teacher is viewing, is you can see all the kids that have turned it in and who hasn't turned it in, and you can assign a grade, and you can make your own point system. And then when I go to the folder, it goes into my Google Drive. So Google Drive is kind of like the little behind the scenes, right? Where when I was saying all of the files are stored in Google Drive, and they all land in a certain folder that I don't have to create the folder, I don't have to organize the folder, I don't have to name the folder. Google Classroom does it for me, and I love that. And it's been great working with other teachers who are now using the Chromebooks as well, who are a little bit more hesitant, because it makes it a lot easier for them too. Yes? So I'm not a good one to answer that question. So instead of doing that, what I do is have the students put all of this stuff on their digital portfolios, on their websites. So they just post it there, and then on open house, they have the Chromebooks on the desks, and they have them open to their website, so then they can just show their parents. But they've been doing that all year long. Can anybody else answer that question? Can you print everything all together? Anybody know about that? Yeah, sorry. I'm like, I hate printing, so I know it's hard to let go. Yeah. So tell her that I said to have them put it on a Google site. Or, even the other thing, too, to modify it for younger kids, like with second grade, we did a project with my son's second grade classes. The teacher made the website and then put the student projects on the website and had that open. So I'm all about, not printing. So, and it even be like they're working with this website called GeoGebra, where they just had to go and take a screenshot, do the angles, because we're doing a geometry unit right now, and then they just had to do a screenshot to demonstrate that they understood it, and they could submit that right in Google Classroom. And it was a lot easier, I think, just logistically. All right. So the other thing, too, is I was talking about how the kids share their photos, and they're going, and different kids are doing little field trips. Like somebody went to Tahoe one weekend, and they took some pictures, and somebody else went to, San Francisco and took the Golden Gate Bridge. Then the other thing that I've done in Google Classroom, I said, well, if you feel comfortable sharing your photos with the other students, because we do a big thing on digital literacy. What I don't want them doing is just going and searching on the internet and pulling off photos that aren't their own. I said, but you can share within each other if you have permission to use it. And I share some of my own pictures as well. So I created a folder of my pictures that they can use. And then in Google Classroom, I have this optional assignment where they can turn in photos that they took that the other students in their class could use in their books. And so I post that in, and so 16 of my kids have gone and taken pictures that they're sharing with their classmates. And then what happens is, in Google Classroom, only I can see the photos. But if I put the link to the folder and then share the folder so that any of them can see it, then I can put that link right there under the resources in the assignment, and then they can access that folder, and then they can go ahead and make that part of their Google Drive, so that when they're doing their presentation, they can insert their classmates' photos on there as well, and then they can put give credit to their classmates, and then their classmates get really excited if one of their friends used their photo in their book too. So it helps them to motivate them as well. Another really great success story I had, probably one of the happiest teaching moments of my school year. So I have one student who is just a sweetheart, but he has a lot of special needs. He was actually supposed to be placed in a special day class. He has a lot of troubles writing. He could barely write. He has an occupational therapist working with him because it's very difficult to read his writing. And we were doing a math unit with long division. And one night, my son had come home, and he's in second grade, and he told us, everybody, I want everybody to go upstairs, close the door. I need to get on the computer because I'm going to be doing a math tutorial, and I need it quiet in the house because my teacher says it's much better if nobody's talking when I do this. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm making this video on education. So I said, really? You can do that on a computer? I didn't know. I thought you could only do it on a tablet. He was like, no, I'm doing it on a computer. And my second grader got on, logged in, and there he was teaching how to do the math problem that he learned. So I think with all of these tools available, it's a powerful way to demonstrate their learning that's a lot more interesting and creative than taking a test, a multiple choice test. So my student here, he in my class, then the next day I went to my class, and we happened to be having the Chromebooks that day. And I said, okay, we're going to try this educations thing on the Chromebook. And they said, how do you use it? And I said, I don't know, but I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys play with it, and maybe we won't get it accomplished or not. I don't know. We'll just try to figure it out, and I want you guys to teach me how to do it. And they all jumped on to educations, and lo and behold, they figured it out. I didn't have to show them because I didn't know how to use it yet. And My student did a long division problem successfully using EduCreations, the one that has problems just writing, which is pretty cool. And it landed in Google Classroom. So for example, let's see if I can figure out how to get back to it. Oh, I think I already opened it over here. So then he could play the video. And you can see him doing the process. So you can't hear the audio right now, but he talked it out, showed how he did the problem. And the other thing that we do is, those privacy folders that they used to use for testing, or they still do? I had the kids put the privacy folders there, and then they took their coats and they put the coats over their heads for better audio. It's like a great little sound booth. It's a great trick. And then we told the kids, everybody's making these videos right now, and we need it to be really quiet because people want better sound, and it totally worked with them, right? And I think for him and for a lot of kids too who get distracted really easily, just the fact that they have that privacy thing with the coat over their heads made it easier for them to be focused on what they were doing. And he did a really great job of it, and he was so proud and so excited. And then he can put that on his Google website to show off. And then he went home and he showed his parents, and he had a really great day. And of course, I was thrilled because if he had done this on paper, there's no way that I could have even read. And he was just using the trackpad on the Chromebook, which is really crazy because you think it's something that's a lot more challenging than what you would do on paper was actually easy for him. So whatever works. Yes? They used their Google username and passwords, and I didn't even know. I said, my second grader figured it out, so you figured it out. So they just used their username and passwords from their Google account, and it worked. And then they had access to their videos. And then in Google Classroom, I asked them to share the link with me. And so in Google Classroom, you can have that option as just submitting a link for the assignment. Then I have a list of all the links so that I can go through and look at each of them all streamlined. And then they can also get the embed link, and then they just go and embed it on their Google site. And so that's something they could put on their math page as a way to demonstrate that they learned how to do the math problem, which could be, boring sometimes to be doing just plain old computation on paper. It suddenly made it a lot more exciting. Or the other thing too is we do images. So I'm actually going to do another session later where I'll show you how to do this. But we made silhouettes. So back in the olden days, we used to do the projector, and we'd have the kids stand in front of the light, and we'd trace around them, and then we'd have to cut it out, and it didn't always look as good. So what we do is we take the pictures, and I have them stand in front of the doorway. So this is just an example of what we do. We have them stand right in the doorway with a light behind them, and it gives a high contrast black and white. And then we edit the photos. You could use something like Snapseed, which is it's a Google app on a mobile device, or in Google+. And we then put it into Google Presentation, and the kids add text onto the slide, and they have 5 words to describe themselves. And then they just make one slide, and then they turn that into Google Classroom. So then I have all of their photos. And these, you were asking about printing. I did print these out. I think I just did one by one. Or I had the kids do it when they were in the desktop lab, where they printed out this. And it was a lot easier because it was black and white. And then, boom, it made a really great open house project. So I did print for that one. And so there's more about the Google digital portfolios with Google Sites. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to have you start doing stuff, and you are going to use that little strip of paper. So raise your hand once again, the people who have the little strips of paper with a username and password. And if you don't have one, please go and sit down next to one of those people. And who knows how to use Google Classroom already? Okay, so those are really great people to sit next to as well. So raise your hand if you're okay about kind of helping people out. So you can have 2 people on one username and password. That works as well. And so we're just practicing how to do this so that if you haven't used Google Classroom yet, you can figure out how to do it. you're going to go onto classroom.google.com, and you're going to log in with that username and password that I gave you. So once again, the Google Classroom is all just inside of the domain. So if you're a Google Apps for Education school, any Google Classroom that you would create would only be available to people who are inside of your domain. And then we made one that was just the people at this conference. And you can log into Google Classroom there. And then what I do is there's a code. So there's two ways that you can do it. You can either email them an invite, or you can have them jump on and type that little username and password, the code, the class code. So when I did this with my students, I put it on that Google Doc that I told you about earlier, and they just copied and pasted the code into the Google Classroom, and it allowed them to do that, okay? So please see if you can figure out how to get into Google Classroom there. So far, one person has gotten in. Oh yeah, buddy up. Please get up and move around and sit next to somebody who's got one of those username and passwords. So you're going to have to either log out, or here's one other option. So if you notice on this screen here, I've opened up a new an incognito tab. An incognito tab you can open up inside of Chrome, which is, I think it's Shift-Control-N and then you can log in on this one. The incognito tab, yeah, Shift-Control-N to open up an incognito tab. So that way, like I'm logged in my personal account, and then I'm logged in under the Google Classroom, because I was showing you my Google Classroom from my school account, and then this allows me to open a new tab with the other account. So it's a great strategy for things like that. Or of course, if you're browsing something that you don't want other people to know that you browsed. And so now I've opened up our Google Classroom, and so far it looks like there's 3 students, so who needs help logging in? Okay, anybody can help these people, buddy up with them to log in? And if I click on the Students tab right here, then you can see all the different people who got in. So right now we've got 4. And like I said earlier, when I'm doing this with my students, the hardest thing is logging in for the very first time. And then once they get that, then everything else gets easier. So I've done these Google Classroom workshops with the people in my school district. And when the teachers are joining one of my classes in Google Classroom, they have to join as a teacher. Thank you. All right, you read my mind. I was going to. So you have to join as a teacher, because if later on you decide that you want to go and be a teacher and you've already signed in as a student, then it won't let you change. So you really, ideally right now, it doesn't make a difference because you'll never be a teacher inside of this domain, but when in your own domain, if you're ever doing this with other teachers, make sure they sign up as a teacher so that they could, if you sign up as a teacher, you're going to be a teacher or a student. But once you sign up as a student, you can never be a teacher again, if that makes any sense at all. It will when you get stuck and you get locked out. So it is really important. I'm glad you asked that question. What about the password? Just make something up. Just any old password, I think, will work. You could, if you're asking to log in as a teacher or a student, you can log in as a teacher, it's fine. And you can still be a student in the classroom if you log in as a teacher. But if you log in as a student, then you won't be able to log in as a teacher ever later on. But yeah, always have teachers log in as teachers, even if you're going to be a student. Log in here, yes. As a teacher, log in as a teacher. If you're ever a teacher or ever doing anything with teachers, have them log in as teachers. Otherwise, you'll get stuck. No, right now you're just going to be a student. right now you're just going to be a student, just so you can see what it's like for the students. So it looks like we're getting a bunch of people in here now, so that's great. So if I want, so while you guys are working on getting signed up, if you want, like I said, you could invite people by email right here to log in or to sign up for your Google Classroom, but they would have to be students, for example, that already have accounts inside of your domain. And over here, a lot of teachers, they have had questions about kids being able to post and comment, okay? Because what they're afraid of is that kids will post inappropriate comments. And I think it's a valuable time to have a discussion about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate for posting inside of Google Classroom. And if they do something that's inappropriate, because there's always one in every class, I can block that one kid from commenting and say, you've lost your privilege of doing it. But in general, it works really well. They figure it out. So what you're seeing up here is what the teacher sees. This is what the dashboard of what the teacher sees. What you're doing on your computers right there is what the student sees, which is a little bit different than what I'm seeing. So I'm doing this and having you guys be students inside of this classroom just so that you can see both sides of it and you can figure out how it works and see the functionality of how it works. So here's the list of students. Here's the list of assignments. And then over here, there's an about page. So I have a description of what's going on in the class. And then if you notice underneath, there's a folder that's the Google Drive folder. So you could be a teacher who teaches many subjects, and you'll have multiple classes. So maybe if you do period 1 and period 2 and period 3, like if you're a middle school or high school, you may have several different classes. Since I only teach one class all day long, I have only one classroom, Google Classroom. And all of that lands, all of their projects and all of their assignments and everything lands in the Google Classroom folder. So if I want to click on this folder, then everything is going to go over there. And then here's my Google Drive. Now my real Google Drive has a lot more stuff in here. But if I open up this little tab here, I have my classroom folder. And then I have another folder. So these are all the different assignments. So each assignment has their own little mini folder inside of it. So right now we've got 26 students logged in, which is pretty good for a Sunday, right? And I just did a couple of sample assignments over here. When you post something with your class, you can either do an announcement or you can do an assignment. If you do an announcement, it's just some news that you want to tell them, and then they can comment. So you can set up different discussions where the kids all say stuff, and it looks like people are already commenting over here. And so usually what happens is the first time you leave something open like that, there's going to be kids that start writing silly stuff. And that's when you have the discussion about, let's think about this. What's appropriate and what's not appropriate to comment in Google Classroom. And we talk about giving positive comments or asking a good question. The other thing that's really great about this is that there's kids who may be too shy to be saying and raising their hand, but they post stuff in Google Classroom that they wouldn't normally say on their own. So I may just pose a question like I might pose a video for them to watch, and then they have to tell me, I'll give them a question and a prompt, and then they just have to comment, just to have a discussion about it. And so I gave a assignment here for you guys just to practice with, just a couple of fun little things for you to try out, just so you get an idea of how it works. So I said, just pick 5 words to describe teaching. And I created a Google presentation template so that each of you got a copy of it, and then you have to just add text on the slide. So it looks like now we have 29 students in here. That's really good for a Sunday. And 2 people are already done. So those are our GATE students, right? Just like in my normal class where some kids get done super fast. So if I go over here, I can see the work, and it gives you a little tour when you log into it. And the folder will land in Google Drive over here, and then these are all the ones that are done. So if I look at this person, now when I do it in my own Google Classroom, it has the kid's name on there. Since we didn't use our real names, it just has the username on there. And so somebody did one right here, teaching, and this was their project. So I can see their project right away, right inside of Google Classroom. And then over here, I've got a list of the assignments that I've posted so far. I did another one where I asked for you to submit a link to an inspirational video here. Or like this one was an example of what I had done with the students of how to use a protractor, and then they have to do a screenshot and turn that in. So I have a few different assignments for you to play with that you can do. So here's the announcement that I posted. Welcome to our Google Classroom workshop. Please feel to ask questions or comments here. And then you can see all the comments that are coming up. So when you do this for the first time, you get a lot of usually silly stuff, but then at some point we usually have serious discussions about it. So if you have questions, you can post them here as well. How many people are actually working on Chromebooks right now? How many people are working on some other laptop computer? And how many people are working on a mobile device? Okay, so the other good news about Google Classroom is you can actually add the app to your mobile device. There's an app for Google Classroom now. The other thing that you can do as well, which is a new feature in Google Classroom, is before they had about 5 or 10 different choices of backgrounds that you could put in Google Classroom. Now you can custom upload your own photo and put that in as your backsplash in Google Classroom. So I love that. Just a cool little thing. Yes? Inside of the Google Apps for Education domain? So the administration, they created the Google accounts for us in advance, and they assigned each student a username and password. So I had nothing to do with that, but I went up and looked at where, we use this Zangle program where I could go look it up and get a list of them all. And I know that there's an art to giving them the passwords and everything too. So the first year that we did that, they gave them a formula for the password. And what happened was the kids figured out the formula. And so then what they did the next year was they changed, it took us the first year, and then the formula was really, it was easy to figure out the formula, but it was hard to type it in for little fingers, for little kids. And they had to do these, shift in some funky little character at the end. So it took us a couple months just to teach the kids how to do it. And then the following year, they switched everything. We had to start all over again. And what they did the second year was they took the spelling list, some, statewide spelling bee list, and they just randomly assigned each kid a spelling bee word for their password. And that actually worked much better. It was much easier. So if you are you an administrator or, yeah, okay. So are there any administrators who could speak to that on assigning the usernames and passwords? Yes? In our district, our usernames are their initials, and then there's 4 digits afterward. I don't know how they came up with the digits. I think it might have been random. So at least it's easier for me to kind of tell which kid is which because it has JD4567. Anybody else, administrators who want to speak to that? Yes. Right. Yeah. So we didn't let our kids, at least not in elementary school, switch their passwords. And I had a list already that I could print out that I have the master list so that if any kid ever gets stuck logging in, I would be able to show them. And what I also did was I put on little index cards because especially for little kids, it's hard for them to log in for the first time. Even for some teachers, even for the first time, it's hard to remember. And I know if you've ever forgotten your password, it's really frustrating. So I had it on the little index cards for the kids. So they would hold that with them. So if they did have to go to the computer lab or whatever, they would carry that with them. And then I also had them pasted in the inside of their planner. Like these kids have little agenda planners. So it was pasted there. And then I sent another copy home for the parents so that if there was ever a problem, it was like all over the place. Yes, another question? Yes. Right. I know they came into, they had all these problems in our district when they first started, and somehow they figured it out. Like the spelling list worked really well for the password because the formula that they had used for the password, there were some kids who figured out the formula for the other kid because it was like their birth date and then their initials and then some funky character. Anybody else want to speak to that? Like some great ideas for naming the username and passwords in their domain? Yes? Right. So the other thing with that, on our Chromebooks, they have some kind of Chromebook management system on it. I don't even know how they did it, but they installed that. So whenever they close the Chromebooks, it logs them out automatically. So there's good and bad to that. The good thing is that we never have problem when we're switching back and forth from different classes. But then if they ever use another computer, they're out of the habit. They don't know to do that habit. So we do have issues with that sometimes, definitely teaching them to sign out when they're on other computers besides that. So here I can see all the different people who are done. And it says done, 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 and not done over here for the people who've done this. And it easily allows me to see right away who's turned it in and who hasn't, as opposed to like doing a stack of papers. So when I'm looking at the assignment, I can see 16 done and 14 not done. And so I can see the list of the kids not done too. So I can like zing them right away. Like, oh, wait a minute, I noticed that you didn't turn this in yet. Like, are you close to being done, or what's your thing? So as they're working, I can have this dashboard open if it's something that's due that day, and I can just kind of tap them on the shoulder right away and find out, as opposed to if they put it in some basket, I won't find out until the end of the day, and I start going through the papers and checking them off. So it's a really simple visual way of seeing. And then also here on the grade, I can assign points and then give them grades if I want as well. So if I am a middle school or high school teacher and I have a whole bunch of students, right here on my home page, it will show all of my different Google Classrooms that I've set up. So if you have 5 different classes, you'll have 5 different ones right here on the dashboard. And then you just click on the class that you want. And then inside of your Google Drive, it shows you all the different little subfolders and class folders. And it does all the organization for you. So it makes it a lot simpler than what we had to do in the past. And I have a YouTube channel with a whole bunch of different videos. So what I've done is I've chunked it up into little skills. So when I do it with my students, and maybe I'm teaching them how to do Google Sites, what I might do is have just one little tutorial on how to make a Google site. And the only thing that they do is just create the skeleton Google site and then have a share link, and then they submit the share link in Google Classroom. So I'll post the tutorial in Google Classroom, and then they have to submit their link. And then the tutorial's there. And then maybe the next time I might teach them how to add pages in Google Sites. And then the next time I might teach them how to add hyperlinks in Google Sites. So all my video tutorials are on my YouTube channel, and you can use those however you want to use them as well. Well, thank you so much. Keep in touch with me. I have my contact information here. All right, thank you.